Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for coming to our third volume launch party. We are so excited to share with you the third volume. Canto Cutie was started a year ago, and we are so excited about this issue. The cover is created by an artist named Adrian Yoon, who is based in Hong Kong. The digital version is already available on the website to read for free, and we're still taking pre-orders for the zine. Tonight, you'll hear 8 performances from 8 extremely talented artists and writers from around the world. You'll hear poetry readings, short story readings. You'll hear some art talks. You'll see some of the art that's in the zine. This is a really exciting dream of mine for canto creatives all around the world to get together and just be bound by our canto-ness wherever you are in the world, whatever your language ability, however you identify with the diaspora. We're just so excited that you're here and that we get to share this space together. During the talks, we just ask that you stay muted if you're not talking. After everyone presents, you can ask questions, or after each person presents, there will be time for you to ask questions. Presenters should be talking for less than 10 minutes, and then we'll ask you free to unmute yourself at that time to ask any questions you have. You're free to use the chat. If you really connect with a certain artist or writer, feel free to ask them for their contact or share that stuff if you're speaking. It's really awesome when cantos get to connect, and if someone's artwork or reading really resonates with you, that's an awesome opportunity for you to connect. So feel free to use the chat for that reason at any time. We know that this isn't just like a one-night thing. This conversation about our identity, it's gonna go on forever. So without further ado, we have our first artist. The first artist that will be talking today is named Adam Chung. Adam writes poetry and love letters. He lives in Hong Kong, where he works as a radio presenter on RTHK. And he also reads poems and daydreams out loud on his experimental podcast, Atomic Hearts. And here's Adam.
Hi, everyone. Thanks, Catherine, for that introduction. I guess because I only have 10 minutes, I'll just get right into talking about my work. So thank you, Catherine, Canto Cutie, for publishing my work. I actually haven't been published that often, so this means a lot to me. The piece is called The Players. And after I submitted it, I actually rewrote it several times. And then when I looked at the version I had submitted, I almost didn't recognize it. But I felt there are some nuances that I had taken out in the rewrite. But then I read the one that I had submitted, I actually liked some of the stuff that I had in there. So this piece is actually part of a book that I'm working on about music by a canto pop band. They're called Dat Ming Yap Hai, Tat Ming Pair, and I think I quoted the lyrics in the piece in Cantonese. And this book actually has 3 sections. The first section is made up of, it's actually taken from a long essay that I had written after seeing their concert for the first time back in 2012. This was the time when I first came back to Hong Kong. I came back in 2009. I was born here, but I lived in Toronto for 20 years. And it was like, it really opened up a lot of doors in my head. It was like a really sort of earth-shattering experience for me. So I wrote a long essay and I submitted it to our journal back in the days. So the first section contains excerpts from that essay. The second section is what I find the most exciting is I basically took 10 of their songs and I created fictional pieces out of them. So the players, the piece I submitted to Canto Cutie is actually the first piece of that section. And I actually didn't intend for it to be a prose poem. It's supposed to be fiction, but I wrote it in a pretty angry mood, as you might be able to tell. Because the image I had in my head was sort of when the politicians came back to Hong Kong after they announced the national insecurity law, and it was just really weird, and the people looked so weird to me, and I was like, these people look like they badly need to go pee. And that was the first thing that came to my mind, the way they stood there in front of that green backdrop. And the second thought I had was like, when was the last time they had sex with their spouses? I don't know. These are like really random thoughts that I had to sort of come to terms with what I was seeing. So this is the book I'm working on. I've actually signed up for a local book fair in Hong Kong. It's called Tok Tok. It takes place at the Mills. If you're familiar with Hong Kong, it's Lam Fong Sa Chong in early August. So I'll be taking my works to that book fair. And I don't think I'll have this book published in time for that because I'm trying to do something fancy. I want to publish these pieces into like a cassette and fit them all into a cassette. And I don't know how to lay out the sheet, the J card for the cassette. I'm really bad with the technical aspect of publishing, even though I love self-publishing a lot. Oh, and I forgot to mention, the third part of the book is actually my reflections from their concert last year. I actually went to all 6 nights, and each night I wrote reflections. So that's the third section of that book. I guess I'll talk a little, I have 5 minutes left. I'll talk a little about self-publishing. So like I said, this book about Tatming Pear, I plan to self-publish. And I'm always a bit conflicted, actually. I mentioned up top that I'm really grateful to have been published at Canto Cutie. I actually haven't been published all that much, and I'm always conflicted as a writer, should I be sending my works out to journals or should I be self-publishing them? Because I really like having control of sort of the artwork, the way my book is laid out, binding and everything, and to sort of do it all myself. And I like going to book fairs and interacting with people there and actually meeting the people who are buying my books. I like that interaction a lot. And so, yeah, oh, thanks for turning to that. Yeah, so on the slideshow, you can see 2 books I have previously self-published before. I actually brought the real copy of Anxious Headlights. This I published in 2016. So I really like these sort of small size. I think it's about like A6 size, sort of like a Japanese pocket-sized novel. So inside I have a little bit of like risograph, printing, sort of pocket size, short stories with text. So anyways, that's the kind of stuff that I do. Without going over time, I think I'm just gonna get right into the reading. I told Catherine that I would actually read a different piece from the one I had submitted. This piece is called, it's actually from the Tatming Pear book, from the fiction section. So again, I took one of their songs and just came up with something random. And I think this is more, you get more of a flavor of the kind of writing that I do, is like there's not much happening, but there's kind of something happening. I'm actually not, like the players, it was very bitter and angry and feisty. It's sort of a side of me that doesn't show up a lot in my writing, whereas this is more like me. So this piece is called Branches That Wobble a Little. It's time to get up, or is it? I asked myself. What a coma. Must be 10 a.m. by the looks of it. Outside, the green tops of trees were on max exposure. The long branches that extended across my window came into focus while the apartment buildings in the distance blurred. The people over there must appear to be up already, I imagined, and that was all I could do. The windows remained motionless, no matter how much focus I exerted. but the wobbling of branches in a light wind was real. The bantering of the ladies in the park suggested that the day could still be said to be early. I reached for the pillow on the vacant half of my queen-size bed, put my arms around it, and thought of what my friend said the night before. We were sitting on a bench facing the fountain. It just hasn't lasted, she said, of the feeling of being completely comfortable in the company of a potential partner. It's so hard to find a man who can listen. This after I told her she was absolutely fine and there was no reason for her not to find someone. Spent the train ride home worrying if my words were too shallow. Of the two pillows on my bed, I chose the flat one to sleep on and the puffy one to hug. I had reversed them once and it didn't feel the same. The puffy one also had a smoother feel. Yet mornings like these, I don't mind at all being by myself, I said to the ceiling, while in my head the day's task list was formulating. I turned to face the window again and partially, now I turned to face the window again, now partially blocked by the puffy pillow, its contour reminding me of the lion rock. Reasons to get out of bed piled up. I looked at my phone. Actual time was an hour earlier than what I had anticipated. So that's all. I guess I'll stop right there. Thanks for being here, and thanks again to Catherine and Canto Cutie for having me. Thanks, guys.
That was a really beautiful reading. Thank you so much for sharing that with us. We will now open it up to questions for Adam. Feel free to unmute yourself. If you want to type in the chat, I will read your question out loud. I'm wondering, what is Lion Rock? Is that someplace in Hong Kong?
It's Xiji San. It's it is the hill in Hong Kong. It's shaped like a lion. Yes. I actually used to live, I actually grew up in Kowloon City. I was born in 1980. And so I lived like between 1980 from when I was born to 89. I lived in Hong Kong. I grew up in Kowloon City, so I could see Lion Rock from my school, from my apartment. And I guess, I mean, back to what I was saying earlier about why Tat Minh Yap Pai is such an inspiration for me, because I feel I'm stuck in 1989. My family left Hong Kong right after June 4th. So I knew what it was about. I remember, I'm old enough to remember it. And Tat Minh Pair, I mean, back then I didn't really understand their songs and the political undertones. But I just felt their music was really cool. And I feel like there's a part of me stuck forever, like 89. And so Lion Rock is sort of a symbol of Hong Kong.
Another question is, what other writers inspire you?
A lot of writers. I guess my top three is James Joyce. I'm a big fan of the Dubliners. Catherine Mansfield is my idol. I love Garden Stories and Garden Party and Other Stories. And Sherwood Anderson, Winesburg, Ohio. I love short story collections. And in fact, when I moved back to Hong Kong in 2009, my plan was to write a short story collection about Hong Kong, and I'm still working on it.
Someone had a comment. You mentioned you work in the genre of when not many things happen, and they like that type of writing too.
Oh, sorry. Someone say they like that kind of writing. Okay,
Yes.
wow. That's very encouraging, because Oh gosh, I think I spent a long time trying to accept that this is the way I write. Uh, I'm not good at plot. In fact, I don't even like it. I don't think that's how life works. But I appreciate well-written stories. I just think it's the way I am. I think I have to write in my voice. It took me a long time to accept that this is the way I am. uh, yeah, I don't know what else to say about that, but it did take me, like I said, I came back in 2009 for writing, actually. This is not a case where you've got a Chinese Canadian saying, oh, life is boring in Canada and coming back to Hong Kong for more job opportunities. This is totally not the case. I love Toronto. I think Toronto is a beautiful place, but I came back to Hong Kong to experience this place. I want to check out the music scene, the art scene. I go to the theater a lot, stage theater. I love stage theater in Hong Kong. And I'm also really thankful for Canto Cutie because when I was living in Toronto in my 20s, I didn't have access to to material about Cantonese diaspora and even sort of underground stuff on Hong Kong, because all I had living in Toronto was just mainstream stuff, TVB stuff. So I came back to sort of, I want to look beneath the surface. There's so much to explore here.
So I actually have something to say about the comment about how like this is the way you write. Like I think I've heard an interpretation of Brokeback Mountain where like someone said that like just describing the natural world around you is a very Chinese aesthetic. Like in Chinese literature, we can see that throughout like poems, like all the classical poems from like Tang Dynasty, where like people just, the poets would just like, you know, use nature as a metaphor for like what's going on internally. And I don't know, I like that kind of stuff. Sorry for calling it stuff, but yeah. Like it's a very Chinese thing because in Brokeback Mountain they showed all the landscape and all that stuff, and it's a reflection of like how these two cowboys in the 60s, they can say how they feel on the inside. They can't express it at all, not even physically, for a very long time. And so like we're just using the natural world to like represent. He was using the natural world to represent like what's going on with the characters. So yeah.
Okay. Yeah, well, that's good to know. I think I'll look it up now that you mentioned the book. Yeah.
No, like it's the movie, like because Ang Lee directed it. Remember?
Right. Yeah, I know. I know. It's also from a short story. I haven't. I've read.
Yeah.
I read the short story a long time ago, but I actually haven't seen the film. So.
Well, the
thanks for
story's not written by a Chinese person, so but
yeah,
Ang
I
Lee
know.
like interpreted it through his lens. Yeah.
Right. And it would be great if anyone here can recommend some works for me. I mean, like what you just said, like writers that sort of write descriptively or plotless experimental fiction. I don't know. I don't know how to call my works. I tell people I write short stories. I suppose they are, and I try to validate them by telling people, oh, I write surrealist fiction, experimental fiction. So this is how I write. This is my voice. Anyone out there, if there are books that you like that sort of has this kind of vibe, feel free to recommend.
Any last questions for Adam? A question you had is, were you referencing Garden Party from the 1920s?
Okay, what about it?
Someone was just asking if that's what you were referencing to.
What I was, the short story collection by Catherine Mansfield, Garden Party and Other Stories. Yeah, she's got this really stream of consciousness way of writing. I read it when I was in university. I was so inspired.
It's been so wonderful to hear about your process, and hopefully you'll get maybe some new connects out of that. Thank you so much for sharing. Our next artist is Chung Tin Tin. Chung Tin Tin is a teacher and a poet born in Hong Kong to a Hokkien family. Her poems have been published or are forthcoming in Cha, an Asian literary journal, The Offing, Sand Journal, Cordite Poetry Review, among others. She is one of the co-founding editors of Edge, HKBU Creative Journal. She believes in music that heals and provokes. Here is Chung Tin Tin.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
It's such an honor to be here, and I know Adam through a writing class, and I'm really enjoying the gay landscape conversation in the chat room now. So I'm kind of enjoying it now to the point where I don't know what to say. But yeah, so thank you for providing this platform for everyone to talk. I do think that so many things are happening in Hong Kong now, and art is a really great way to express what we feel. Because sometimes I don't know how to find a way to talk to people, because sometimes I just don't know how I'm feeling every day. And then the picture here shows the baby that I'm writing the poem to, and hopefully in 2 years' time he will be able to understand my poem. So basically, I almost invited the mother and the baby to join this reading, but obviously the mother was having a breakdown yesterday, from moving furniture to her new place before she moved to the UK in November. So I thought I would just meet them. And this is a poem that I'm not quite sure, but I love it. I'm not sure about if I should be writing about real persons with their names in poems anymore. Given all the sensitive content and the legal problems in Hong Kong. But I love it for a lot of reasons, because in this poem I try to record how the baby talks and how the baby learns poems from Tang Dynasty. And you know, when babies talk, they have this baby accent. They say things wrong, but then sometimes the way that they say things wrongly kind of gives things a new meaning, and they're super cute, so they're free to make all the mistakes that they want. And then yeah, and I also really like the idea, because this baby obviously likes English more. He really enjoys reading. Sometimes we just take away books from teachers, from friends, without asking. And we do think that the main reason for him to like English more than Cantonese. And then it's that the English materials, the children's books, and everything is just more appealing. And sometimes I wonder if we can have Cantonese early education materials, like books and songs and nursery rhymes, that are equally appealing to toddlers. And so that's why I feel what am I doing? Writing an English poem for him to read at some point. And I know that Cantonese is super important for him, especially he's moving to the UK soon. But yeah, this is I guess this what I'm reading today would be the first draft of what I can offer to this toddler who's my favorite person ever. I can never imagine myself liking a baby this much. So Catherine, could you turn to the next page? And disclaimer, I don't know how to read some part of the poem, because translation is a mess here, because I'm trying to translate the original meaning of the poem that the kid reads, and also I'm trying to translate his misreading. So it's a mess here, but hopefully you guys could understand through this mess. So the poem is titled Rudimentary Cantonese. Okay. Rudimentary Cantonese. Your toddler's accent renewed Tonsi, poems from the Tang Dynasty, gracing anxious aunties before sleep, who play your features on repeat. Lines live on beyond the poet's intention. Farlop, Siu, final, Siu, flowers fall, who knows how many. Zheizhong tickle smile. Can we move to the next? Yeah, thank you. Your mother goes by the name C, knowing he will be as stubborn as me. H stands for home, Hong Kong, but most importantly, honesty. You will gain a new mother tongue. Cantonese made to live among your household in the tilted rhymes of spring sleeping in mine soil. Yeah, so that's it. So the last line comes from the poem that the baby was reading, Chen Xiu by Man Hu. So it's about you wake up in a spring morning, everything is gay, and you want to write about it. So, yeah, that's it. That's all my sharing. Thank you for this opportunity. Yeah.
Thank you so much for letting us be a part of your gifts to your coworker. If anyone would like to ask a question, you may. I will read out any questions in the chat. The first question is, how do you balance writing poetry in Chinese and English?
Wow, like I read poems in both Chinese and English, but I mainly write in English. For some reason, like I'm kind of like a lot of people, like after you choose one medium, then you get stuck in it. So for some reason, I chose English since I was 11 or 12. So yeah, but then like now I realize that I really want to write about my Cantonese background, my Chinese culture, and often I just, like I've been writing poems that are not really understandable by people who don't speak Cantonese, and I still don't know how to like get through that. Like sometimes I would like to translate a joke or reference, and then like people from other cultures would be like, this is interesting, but I don't know Cantonese, so like this is really tough for me. But a part of me is like, maybe I should write for the Cantonese audience first, because very often like the Cantonese audience can't really find English stuff that directly resonates with them. And I thought maybe I would serve this group of people first. So yeah, I'm kind of ignoring all the non-Cantonese speakers. Yeah. And then and I also learned a lot from like other Cantonese speakers who write in English. So Mary Jean Chan, really, really good source, like so beautiful. Like I always think that a Cantonese should be more playful and vulgar at some point, but Mary Jean Chan could really turn a vulgar like street language Cantonese into something beautiful. And I'm like, how did you do that? Yeah, so Mary Jean Chan definitely a great source. Follow my work. I'm too shy to publish my work, but you can Google my name, and there are like random places. I've been throwing my pieces in random places. So I did have a poem about eating too much food in Chinese New Year on rice paper, a Canadian magazine. And so yeah, just my name like Tim Tim, and then like New Year poem, like random words, and you will find me. But yeah, I'm really hoping, I'm trying to see if I could publish something on Instagram or in the form of a book. But so far, I'm just like, I need to figure things out. But definitely, like now, yeah, don't follow me now, but follow me when I'm better, like in the future. But do feel free to Google my name. Thank you. This is too much love for a morning. Yeah. Thank you so much.
A question you have is, as you said, there's something very street about spoken Cantonese. Do you feel like you sometimes can't capture its essence in written form?
Definitely. Yeah. I'm actually trying to do like verbal, like spoken words poetry with Cantonese. I really like to, like for example, like this is a common topic between me and my friends. We really want to capture the MK Sai and MK Mui. So I don't know how to translate MK Sai and MK Mui in English already. So they're basically a bunch of teenagers who follow the fashion style from Mongkok. The fashion style from Mongkok 10 years ago, they were cheap and the style is very cheap, and they just smoke, they do all the best stuff in the street. So one really famous example of MK by MK Mui would be Hoi Ting. So Hoi Ting basically smokes 2 cigarettes at the same time, and she brags about it, saying that you can't be as bad as me because I'm smoking 2 cigarettes at once. And then we have this slang now, it's like you're better than Hoi Ting. So it's full of like bad grammar and bad jokes, but we appreciate like how honest they are with themselves. They're not trying to pretend that they are cool. And then, but it's hard to translate all this in English and in the written form. And maybe like what Atom is doing could work like a radio about like, about them. And then, so, yeah. So, but definitely the written form is limiting in terms of like capturing Cantonese. And Cantonese itself is kind of, I would say, more verbal than written, but I know a lot of people are trying to capture Cantonese in the written form too. So that's why we have all these like journals to promote Cantonese literature rather than submitting to the normal like written Chinese rules now. Yeah, but definitely a thing that I'm also looking forward to. Yeah, Hoi Ting is really amazing, and the discussion springing from Hoi Ting smoking 2 cigarettes at the same time is really interesting because it's not just in Hong Kong. So it turned out that some parts of rural China, when they had their weddings, they would force the bride and the groom to smoke tons of cigarettes with the strangest of choose. So I saw a video of like a newlywed. They were forced to smoke like 5 to 10 cigarettes held together with a plastic bottle. So yeah, I do think that like, and it's strange because we thought that like rural, like because Hong Kong people have so many prejudice, like so much prejudice against Chinese people, but turn out when we are having fun, and then we are using the same way, same tool, and we're making the same jokes too. So I do think that like the MK culture is definitely worth looking into. Yeah. Oh, the cigarette games. Thank you. Yeah, thank you. You can actually see the link here.
We'll take one more question. You may unmute yourself if you want. How did your coworker react to getting this gift? And was there a formal process where did you record yourself with the kid, or how was this recorded? And I guess more about that.
Yeah, so I told Atom to like order Canto Cutie like 2 copies for me, so I will be keeping 1 copy, and I'm giving my coworker another copy too, and I'll record the moment when she reads the book. Hopefully, I can make her cry. And then maybe in 2 years I can harass her son into reciting my poems. That would be awesome. Yeah. So she's really secretive too. So I'm secretly afraid that she doesn't like her name in a poem. So I don't know. I will see when she sees the poem.
I'm surprised you managed to keep it a secret this long.
Yeah, like all poets do, right? Like there are different types of poets. Like one kind of poets just like show whatever they have, but one kind just kind of like hide things until the moment they die. You know, I'm kind of like stuck in between. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Tim, for sharing. Up next, we have the artist Z Cam. Z is also an editor of Canto Cutie. and helps me curate the work and edit the work. Z was born in British colonial Hong Kong in the early 90s and moved to Texas in 2007 as a teen. Cam's family history of being political refugees of communist China runs parallel to their own escape from Hong Kong culture. As a first-generation immigrant, Cam explores the outsider and insider perspectives through the lens of gender non-binary person, both when observing American culture and looking back at their Sino roots. By using escapism and nostalgia as an expression, Cam reestablishes a sense of belonging through their works.
Okay. Am I having any technical issues? No, okay, it's working. So I'm hearing myself twice. I don't know what to do.
Maybe mute yourself on the other device. Or mute the other device. But you sound fine to us.
Hold on. Give me a second. I'm sorry. What about now? But now I can't hear everybody else. Wait, Catherine, can you say something?
Hello.
Okay,
Can
I
you
hear.
me? Okay.
I'm not gonna read my piece because I'm not a writer. I'm an official artist. I write stuff, but I'm not a good writer, I don't think. So I'm just gonna summarize what I wrote. In the first part, I share about a recollection I have from my childhood. It's like a really regular night where like I lived in public housing with my grandparents and my uncle, my elder uncle, and we had so much crap that like we would put them in boxes, and we during the day we would like put them on our beds. We have a bunk bed. Like my uncle slept on top and me and my grandma share at the bottom, and then my grandpa had his own room because he smoked all the time. Like he's a chain smoker and he does it in his own room all day. So my grandma didn't want to like share a room with him. And so like me and my uncle and my grandma had all our stuff in boxes. Mostly it's my uncle and my grandma's stuff because I was like a little kid. I don't have that much stuff. I didn't have that much stuff. And then so they would like hoard all their stuff in boxes and like have them on the bed during the day. And then at night when we need to sleep on the beds, we would start like at 10 a.m. we would start moving all those boxes of stuff to the living room, the dining table. And that's where we store them at night. Does that make sense to everybody? It's pretty crazy. I don't know. I thought that was like a normal Hong Kong situation because like we all have very small like living spaces, but apparently not. Like I've been to other classmates' houses and not everyone like moves stuff at night to sleep. and so we did that, and then like but like at night there's like also more stuff in the room still, like because my grandma just had a lot of stuff. It's like there's supposed to be a window in our bedroom, but like there's a bunch of stuff. There's a mountain of stuff, so you can't even see through the window anymore. And so at night I sleep, next to the wall between I sleep between the wall and my grandma in the lower bunk. But if I need to pee, I need to get up, right? And like we have like tiles, ceramic tiles. It's really cold, and so I have to like carefully climb over my grandmother and then like get on the tiles and like go pee. But also like sometimes I don't want to get up because the pile of stuff against the window start to look like monsters, and like I was a little kid and it's really dark, and then and I would like try not to, oh maybe I don't need to pee, maybe I can't wait till morning or something. But like I would still do it because I don't want to pee myself. And then I go out and it's like dark outside, and then the scariest thing was the altar where like we were a traditional family practicing like Chinese folk religion, and then like we worship our ancestor, and then like also Beiju, the god of land. And so we have and Guangong as well. And so, you know, the altar's red, the whole living room is dark, and it's just scary. Like there's red light bulbs, and then like, and you have to walk right past it in order to go to the bathroom. And so that was like a really scary thing for me to do. I just try to run really fast and then like try to say, you know, excuse me, because those are really important entities. I don't want to like offend them because I need to pee. And then like, I would just, yeah, go. And then sometimes I would like run into my grandpa because he's coming out to like, you know, get a snack or something. And he's like really tall and skinny. And then like, so he also kind of looks scary if you like, you know, if I'm just coming out of a room and then someone's there. And then sometimes I would like go into his room and watch TV with him, like late night, the English channel, and watch like a show with him before I go back to bed. And yeah, it's just like a little memory that I have. And I feel like that happened a lot. And like I can't remember like exactly like which day, but like that's just like a childhood memory of like a format of a night. And I went on to talk about, and then I wrote something extra in response to this piece that I wrote that I just talked about, as well as another submission that we got this time, which is a Irish girl. She was talking about how she went back to visit Wang Daixin, which is like where her maternal grandparents live. And she wanted to reconnect with those relatives. And like she went back for the first time without her mom as the translator and the tour guide. And but they were not very receptive to her. She didn't speak Cantonese, so her mom wasn't there to like help translate everything. And I'm also from Wangdai like the scene I just described to you, that public housing is also from Wangdai. And so I felt like a connection. I want to say something. And the most important part for her was that she felt like her family, her relatives didn't really like that she had tattoos, and she felt really judged. And I mean, I can't speak for like, you know, her family or anything like that. Like, I don't know what everyone involved is like thinking, but I had some thoughts about like tattoo art. Like, in my recent works, I've been very like inspired by tattoo art, even though I don't have any tattoos, and I'll probably never get one because I'm an artist and it's hard for me to pick something that I think I'll like forever on my body. And so, but I have a really close friend, a collaborator, artistic collaborator. We collaborate a lot. We just had a show. Like we're not just like, oh, collaborate. We're serious. And she's become a tattoo artist in the past 2 years. She started apprenticing, and then now she's like a full-blown tattoo artist. And I've always had this like deep admiration for tattoo art, even though I don't want one on my body. I just see them as art, and I appreciate them and respect them. And I started like appropriating a lot of tattoo like visual cues in my paintings. And so you can see on the screen, there's two. I don't know how tattoo like you feel like they are, but I've been very inspired by the way my friend makes art. So, and I guess my whole point was that like, I'm talking a little bit about like monsters in our childhood imagination, and superstitions in Hong Kong culture and religious culture. And I mean, those things are related to the tattoo culture of Hong Kong as well. And there's a little history going into it where sailors from the US, they used to get tattoos from Hong Kong artists when they first started giving tattoos. And that's how the Eastern tattoo imagery traveled back to the West. And so the way like a lot of Western tattoos look now, before it was just all like sailor swallows and like pinup girls, but like now it's like more influenced by, you know, the way we draw mythical creatures, dragons, tigers, and all those things. And I think it's like a little sad for Puka, the Irish girl who talked about this, that like, oh, like there's like a miscommunication, like a communication barrier. And like there's just something there that I wanted to comment on, I guess. Like people in Hong Kong, they don't all not like tattoos anymore. Like things have changed. Attitudes towards tattoos have changed. Even though like part of me not wanting to get tattoo is that old mindset of like, yeah, I don't know. I don't think tattoo is like something for me. Maybe I'm influenced by that too. That's why I don't want one or something. But yeah, I'm talking a little bit about like the way we imagine these mythological figures. Sometimes we believe in strongly religiously that we worship and in our homes and all that. I don't have an altar anymore. I don't worship these mythological figures, but I do kind of believe in like the power behind art. And like I see the way like tattoos, like there are people that talk about how like tattooing something on your body is like putting a talisman on your body, and it can have power, or you can channel it. Some people, like yakuza, or like even in Chinese tattoo practice, people believe that if you tattoo a mythical entity or like a powerful religious figure on your body, you can actually channel them. And some people get sick because they cannot hold the power of that entity. I think that's interesting. It's probably they just didn't practice very good hygiene for the tattoo, and that's why they got sick, probably. But it's so interesting to think about like the way people believe in artistic portrayals of like these things that hold power. That's kind of how I look at tattoos too. Sometimes they don't have to be that way. They can just be silly and fun and something that you like looking at. But yeah, there's some roots in that. And then I did some research last year about the indigenous culture that was living in southern part of China before the Han Chinese invaded. And those are called the Baiyue people. In English, it's like Baiyue. I don't know. I'm just gonna spell it out in the chat. It's spelled Baiyue, and the Yue part, it's like you, right? It's like you, like the same as like the way we say Cantonese, and it's also, but it's actually the word we use for Vietnam, Yue Lam or Yue, and so like then just talk about how like actually like there's like common ancestry between like Cantonese people and like modern day Vietnamese people and all that. They're all descended from that indigenous group. And those people practice tribal tattoos. So like in some sense, we were domesticated by the Han Chinese, and then we started adopting Confucian culture and philosophy, and started to think that, oh, tattoos are bad, and having short hair is like cutting your hair is not good, because those Bayou people had tattoos and they also had short hair. Yeah, I think that's about it. Like those are all my paintings. I guess I'll open up to comments. Did I make sense? Like if I missed any explanation, can someone tell me?
Feel free to unmute yourself to ask a question or just type in the chat. I'll read them out loud. I'm wondering if you could talk more about like the black oil looking stuff, like the gloop at the bottom, because I know a lot of your art, in this series has to do with, altars, tattoo, like turn of the century tattoo culture, your grandma and stuff like that. I wonder if that is connected or if that's more of like commentary on, I don't know, something else.
That's a very nice observation. And no, I didn't intend it to be tattooing, but I like that interpretation. I just wanted to draw something gooey and dark, and I used black because I wanted the pink to pop out. The pink was painted like line by line. Like I had like the pink on the outside, the very outside, and then like I gradually added more black and more black to each iteration of the line. So that was like a pain in the ass to make, but I mean, it looks nice. I just handed off this painting to someone who bought it, so I won't be able to see it anymore. It's gone.
I'm wondering if you can explain some of the symbols on the bottom, like the lemon and the blue comb thing.
I don't think they have any real significance. They're just like pretty things I wanted to draw, and like they look bright. I'm getting used to like it's okay to not have everything have like a deep ass meaning. Like it's okay like to just put things there because it looked right. I mean, lemons are, you know, life give you lemon, make lemonade. That's like the easiest explanation I can come up with. But no, otherwise, I don't think there's a deep explanation for this one. I think the focus of this piece is more like the mask on the rabbit. Like I wanted to, like a rabbit is like a really soft, cute thing, right? And I just want to like give it an angry or a serious looking expression. Um, there must have been some explanation for that moon looking thing, but I don't remember it. Sexy rabbit energy. I don't know if it's sexy. I named this painting Darius because I don't know if y'all remember like 3 months ago or something. There's this giant bunny, like Guinness record giant bunny that went missing in England. I don't know if they found him yet, but this is a pretty big ass bunny. I think, okay, I remember why I put the lemon there. It's to show how big this bunny is. If that's the size of a lemon, that's a big ass bunny. Thank you, Kayla. Yes, lemon show for scale. Come on, people, just say something. It's okay. It's okay to interpret art and be wrong. Come on.
Your artwork reminds me of like Dia de los Muertos art, like in Mexico, where it's like haunting, but sweet, like cute, but you know, it is a very like somber kind of topic. I'm wondering if that influenced your work, and how do you balance, you know, scary dreams that you had as a child with like these very sweet colors?
Sweet colors can be scary. It's like both, like there's like some power and beauty is what I'm saying, right? That like beauty is both attractive, but it's also like it's pleasurable to us, but it's also like, whoa, there's like power there. It might be like, you know, be careful. Like very colorful, bright colored animals are often poisonous, right? Or venomous. And yeah, I did watch Coco, and I cried, and I thought like, whoa, like it's really similar to like how Cantonese people think about death. Like there's a lot of similarity, and the colorfulness to it as well. It's very similar to the rituals we have around death. And I felt really grateful for a second that like I live in Texas and like I'm kind of adjacent to that culture, Tex-Mex. And I just felt even more connected to where I live now because of that. Okay, let me get to some of these questions in the chat. Megan said, I noticed for your paintings, you create borders a lot for them. Is there significance? There's definitely is one. So the borders that are shown here, like this is a panel. Let me, oh, actually I have the painting. Let me grab it real quick. So this is one of the painting. I paint on the borders like this. So this is a panel, like you hang it like that. But like I paint on the side. So like Darius, the giant bunny, it's also like paint on the side. I just photoshopped it so that like it'll show on the front so I can like show you the border at the same time. But that's how I do my paintings, and why I do them this way is because I want them to feel like an object. I mean, it looks like a fucking box, like just like, you know, like a box, and it feels like an object. And I believe in art being objects, rather than like, because people talk about paintings like, oh, is it just a illusion of a window on the wall that like, you know, like a portal to a world that you just painted. But it's not just I'm claiming both. I'm claiming that it's both a portal as well as an object. I think in my writings, in my writings about my art, I talk about how like the patterns serve as a spell, like the spell that open a fictive portals through which there is a otherworldly place that you can see what's going on in there. So yeah. And I mean, it's related also to like the decorative tendency of like the Chinese aesthetic. And I don't always use just Chinese style patterns. Like obviously this one is not a Chinese style pattern, I don't think. Darius the bunny has a more Chinese looking pattern, but it's not like authentic either. I actually copied it off of a book about Shinotsuri, which is like back in the Victorian era or something in Europe. Europeans were obsessed with, other than just Japanese aesthetic, they were also obsessed with like Chinese aesthetic. And so they created a lot of design books about like, oh, the Eastern aesthetic, and like it's their interpretation of what Chinese aesthetic looked like. But like, it's beautiful. I like it. Like, it's like if cultural appropriation create any good things, it's Shinotsuri. Yeah. Okay.
Thank you so
And
much.
then, oh, are we done? Yeah, I talked for a long time. I think it's good. If anyone have any questions, just feel free to reach out to me on Instagram.
Yes, Z, you can drop your Instagram in the chat. Feel free to follow all of their work. And thank you for your thoughtfulness and all your answers. Our next presenter is Sally Chen. Sally is a queer, second-generation Chinese American illustrator and poet that loves to make work about connections to people, places, and/or objects through the lens of intimacy, ideas of home, and identity. They're currently a BFA illustration student at Parsons School of Design and dream of a future with less boundaries and more love. They adore pockets of sunshine, jade pendants, purple jelly, and holding hands. Now we have Sally.
Hello. I'm going to talk about one of the illustrations in a recent series that I made called Superstitions Around the World. This one will be called Flipping Fish, and I'll also be reading a poem I wrote back in high school about kind of like the parallels between Toy-san back when I visited in 2016 and also, I guess, in Brooklyn, New York. Mm-hmm. Go back. Oh no. This one is, no, Toy-san and me. Oh no, what's going on?
I'm sorry, which slide do you want to go to?
Oh, Flipping Fish.
Okay, sorry.
That's okay. This one is an illustration called Flipping Fish, and it's basically, again, part of the series that I made called Superstitions Around the World. And for this one, it's a superstition, I think, mostly in the southern districts of China, where if you flip a fish when you're halfway through eating it, instead of removing the bone, then you basically curse a fisherman or like a whole group of fishers on a boat to capsize. And I heard that a lot growing up, and it always got me a little worried, but I never would remove the bone myself. So it's just like a memory-based illustration based off that memory, and kind of like bringing my own twist to it to see like what that would actually be like. Mm-hmm. And then the next one is a poem that I wrote. Again, Toy-san and me. You can go to the poem. I'll do a reading for it. In a land that I have not returned to in over a decade, the scent of car exhaust from the exhausted, cigarette smoke from disillusioned teens and overworked uncles, and the meaty smell from street food stands that have existed for years, making and remaking a family tradition, as if possessed by the spirit of their ancestors, fills my lungs. The sound of mahjong tiles clicking and clacking as if they're moved by old but nimble fingers that know each piece by the grooves, a telltale sign that they've played the game for years, the ring of a passing bicycle bell, and urgent pedaling, a reassuring cue that they're being waited for, that they're needed. The buzzing from mosquitoes, a soft yet constant reminder that we're never alone, and hushed murmurs in a heavily accented dialogue through thinly veiled apartment windows, whispering about divorce, money, and death. Of course, death fills my ears. The sight of a glowing convenience store sign a block down, whose neon light caresses the faces of those who pass, softening yet revealing each individual's hills and dips, ups and downs. Uniform, towering apartments covered in vines, marble, and steel. Were they ever meant to be together, those things made by Mother Nature and those things made by our nature? Fills my eyes. Above me is an inky black sky peppered with just about a million glittering stars, twinkling as if they were trying to play peekaboo with the dark that gently envelops them now, but will undoubtedly soon consume them. Well, Paul says, if you look at them for too long, you're going to have as many moles as there are stars. But even in a city where the stars hide, I bloom speckles of pigment, a natural reminder that maybe I'm supposed to be on the watch for them. I breathe, and in this small city, in this fleeting, seemingly insignificant moment, only wonder fills my heart. I wrote this poem, I think the same year that I went, or like maybe a year after I went to Toyson for the first time in a decade. And this was after like, I think a month visit of Toyson back in the villages. And then this was going into the city for the first time that I like actually remembered, other than that one time that I went for a couple of weeks when I was 2 with my grandma. But it was so magical seeing like, just like everyone, like hearing Cantonese around me, hearing Taishanese around me, and then like seeing all these things that like my grandparents and my parents called home. And then like having memories of my own from it and taking photos of my own from it, experiencing the world as if it were new, but it was still so like, I guess ingrained with them, and kind of like that mutual feeling of building new but like old memories together. It was just like, it was crazy. I really enjoyed like, especially the parts of just walking down the street at night and like seeing stars in the sky for the first time. Like these things that were so, I guess, given to my parents because they lived in the countryside and I lived in Brooklyn. So like at the most, I would see like 4 stars a night and I'd be like, that's crazy. But back in China, when I looked up, it would be like, I would say like 9 p.m. I would look up and I'd see like hundreds. And I think that I connected that to like my grandma's superstition basically about like, oh, if you look at the stars too much, you're going to have moles. But I always really thought moles were really pretty. So I didn't mind that. Any questions? Oh, for my illustration process, I guess I first thought about what kind of superstition I wanted to make, and then I drew I believe, a traditional sketch just with like paper and pencil, and then I took a photo of it, and I worked on it digitally on Photoshop with a Wacom tablet. Thank you. Yeah. Honestly, my color palettes, I really just go by, not to say the vibes, I really just do go by the vibes. I just am really drawn to like warm colors and earthy tones. They feel really grounding to me, and they feel like, yeah, they feel like color memories. Yeah, that sounds a little corny. Actually, the rest of the series is, I only have 3 other images so far. One is from India, where the superstition is about peepal trees and how if you sleep under one, then because peepal trees are considered really sacred, then the spirits would come out and basically kill you. But scientifically, it's been proven that sleeping under a peepal tree or any large tree at night would basically take away oxygen from the area that it's in. And so it's like sort of based in science and sort of like not. Another illustration in the series is a Russian superstition in which if you step over someone and you don't step over back, then they stay that height forever. And so I drew someone very tiny for that under like a huge, someone like massive stepping over them. And then I think the last one so far is a Greek superstition where if a newborn baby looks in the mirror without being Christian beforehand, then a demon inside the mirror is supposed to like take their soul from them and it's over for the baby. So
The next question is, do you have a story, or can you tell us the inspiration behind these 2 people that you've chosen? Are they family, strangers?
So I guess about the 2 people in the boat, I kind of just they're just what I imagine, what kind of just like what I imagine going out fishing to be like in the port cities. I don't think I've ever really, yeah, I haven't been there, but it's just what I think would be like. But I don't have any stories for it, at least not now. Well, thank you so much.
A lot of your work is like inspired by stuff from your childhood. And when I looked at this picture and the other pictures from your series, they all really remind me of like children's book.
Yeah.
Is that your inspiration? Is that, I know you're currently in school, is that your path? Are you interested in doing more work?
It is definitely. I've been wanting to do children's books since I was 5 years old. I recently took like a children's book illustration class, so I'm like working on a little children's book dummy currently about a Chinese American girl and her grandmother and their little farm in their backyard. I mean, not a farm. Yeah, I guess the little garden in their backyard full of fruits and vegetables in like Brooklyn. So my dream is to be releasing a children's book and probably many more.
Thank you so much for sharing about your inspiration, your process. Please put your social media so we can follow you.
Thank you.
Up next, we have Wendy Cheng. She is a multidisciplinary artist from Hong Kong, currently based in Toronto, Canada. Her studio work embodies contrasting textures and repeated patterns both on paper and with clay. Her artistic practice is an exploration of the interactions between interior spaces and exterior facades. Particularly, she's interested in how lived experiences are shaped within the confines of physical environments. Passionate about cultural arts and culture, Wendy has also worked at a public arts organization for a number of years to bring community-engaged installations to life. Here is Wendy. Wendy, if you're there, we can't see or hear you.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Okay.
Hello?
Hello, we see and hear you now.
I'm so sorry. Okay. Is this good? Okay, I'm gonna restart. My name is Wendy Chang. My pronouns are she and her. Before I begin my presentation, I just want to acknowledge that the land I'm connecting with everyone from today is the ancestral Wendat territory and the shared territory of the Anishinaabe and the Haudenosaunee, covered by the Dish with One Spoon Treaty, and later Treaty 13 signed with the Mississaugas of the Credit, and the Williams Treaties signed with the multiple Mississaugas and the Chippewa bands. I am an immigrant from Hong Kong and therefore a settler who has and continued to benefit from the colonial violence on this land, commonly known as Canada. I acknowledge the trauma and systemic injustice Indigenous peoples experience and commit to actively unlearn the role and responsibility in the genocide, displacement, and theft of land from the Indigenous peoples across the country. Without the wisdom and nourishments from the original caretakers, I would not be able to begin my creative practice here. And I understand that this acknowledgement should not and will not be the end of my action in solidarity with Indigenous nations for freedom. Just for context, I moved to Toronto in the beginning of 2007. And so I was about 10 and a little too young to kind of understand what I wanted to do with my life or like what I wanted to do, yeah, for the rest of my life. But I was like really sure that it had to be like something creative and something to do with my hands. And so these sketches that appear in the zine were completed when I went back in 2016. And at that time I was in my second year of university studying illustration. I think as someone who was living in Toronto and doing like all the growing up as a teenager, when I returned back to Hong Kong, everything was like an inspiration to me. And for those of you who have been to Hong Kong, you know how like crowded it is. But like all of those, like everything was like so overwhelming in like such a like positive and emotional way for me. And I just want to document like everything. And if you like go to the next slide, there's like different views from like the exterior facets of the building from, or like me being inside of like those apartment buildings that can span from like 60th floor to like 100th floor, or just like documenting like my breakfast with my mom the next day at like a local cha chan. So yeah, and you can kind of tell like by the composition that I like filled the page like edge to edge just because I was so like excited by everything that was there in the city with like a fresh perspective. And then so when I returned back to Toronto, I kind of like took that practice with me and I focused on doing like urban sketching of like just different streetscapes with just a single color line work. I was really fascinated by just the different elements on the streets and also being able to like fine tune my kind of like attention and focus by just focusing on what's in front of me without really getting distracted by anything else. And then my last trip back to Hong Kong was kind of in 2018. And these are the sketches that were completed during that last trip. And you can kind of tell that the composition like changed quite a bit in that like I allowed so much more room afterwards, like around the pages. And there's also like little snippets of text here and there to kind of like jot down my emotions throughout the day, but also like what kind of happened, what kind of mindset I was in. And so like all these like kind of practice was also very meditative for me just because one, I could be like alone with my like cup of coffee and just like draw away with like whatever color pencils or markers I had at the time. But also I think sometimes I don't remember exactly what happened during the trip or like what happened at that specific moment until I look back onto these sketches a couple of years later. And it almost feels like a little surprise or like a gift from like the past me to like the future me that feels really comforting, especially in today's time. Yeah, and then I think the next slide is probably just like another example of showing like how differently the composition has changed from the beginning, where like it could span from like, I think from this page, it probably spanned like a couple of days where like on the right side, it was like just me standing in front of the harbor and just drew for like 15, 20 minutes, 30 minutes. Whereas like on the left is probably like, I went back and forth a couple of times just to see what kind of like elements would work with like this person standing with the stand. But also like you can probably tell from the like subway like handles at the top. So yeah, it kind of feels like a visual collage as well, just like with different drawings. And I think like I still today have the same practice where I carry a little pocket sketchbook with me wherever I go. This slide, it just shows like I think one of the most recent or one of the last trip I went to Montreal with my partner, and instead of just focusing on like line work with like a single color or like marker, I kind of like expanded beyond my comfort zone and use like pencils, which I don't really use much, to kind of like explore more into that like exterior and exterior spaces, and like what to really leave out of the composition and of the spreads and what to include in the compositions. So yeah, I guess that's kind of like the end. I like really sped through that. I guess I want to end by saying like thank you for Canto Cutie for the opportunity for all of us to kind of connect. I feel like it's like so needed, especially today. I also want to give a shout out to like other Cantonese zines that I know are doing great work around the world. There's one that's like based in Australia. Their name is like Jo Mut Ye, and I know they're publishing their first issue very soon. So check them out. And there's also another zine called F for Hong Kong Protest Music, where it focuses on different music that Hong Kongers have written over the years during the movement, with like different illustrations and writings, which also I think you should check out. I know they're working on the second issue, so and yeah, I think last but not least is this volunteer group that I'm with as well called We Are Hong Kongers. They're a global volunteering team who's really striving to preserve like the Hong Kong culture through different interviews and articles for people who live in Hong Kong right now, but also creatives around the world. So yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much for talking about your process. I really love your illustrations. We're opening it up for questions. You mentioned earlier that you see these sketches as like a gift that past you is giving to future you, and I really love that metaphor. I'm wondering if you also if you ever scrapbook or journal in other ways other than these like very visual storytelling methods.
I think funny thing is that I didn't start journaling until when I went back to Hong Kong in 2018, and I realized that my sketchbook, because they're like small, that they won't fit the little notes I jot down with illustrations. So I then decided to separate my writing from the illustrations. So then that's when I kind of started having a journal, which I still keep up with journaling today. But yeah, I think nowadays I kind of like do it differently. If I like really want to have like a serious like thinking session, then I'll like journal in my like journal reserve for writing. But I will still like write here and there, depending on like what I'm doing during my day-to-day. If I'm like out in a park, I've been really enjoying going to this like neighborhood park that's like minutes away. Just sitting on like the top of the hill and just like drawing and people watching has been really nice. So yeah, I highly recommend it.
Another question you got is for observational sketching, sometimes there's tension between how things look and how you want things to look. How do you reconcile this? Do you try to blend both your imagination and your surroundings?
Sometimes I wonder if that's why I really like drawing buildings and streetscapes, because they don't move as much as like people do in between. And I think sometimes I like, for example, I draw on the like streetcar and like subway a lot when it's like my style, I have to get up and move. And sometimes I'll just continue the line from before, but into like a new shape or a new thing. And then when I eventually have like the page like finish, it doesn't really like I couldn't really tell that that was like kind of where I ended, other than the fact that I like use a different pencil or a different pen or something. Because I feel like the sketchbooks I have where I'm just like drawing for fun, I try to keep things really loose and really like playful. So I really don't have much like expectation going in. And I think like over the years, I've like gotten better at that as well. Whereas like before, even the first couple of slides that you've seen, like everything are like so tight together. Like I think the first 2 slides, like everything feels like they have a place because like I had to fill in everything, but make sure that they have like 0.25 border around everything else. Whereas like now I'm trying to like be more loose with like overlaps and like transparency or like using different mediums. So yeah, I think, I don't know if that answers the question, but yeah.
Another question is, would you ever combine the two? Journaling and your illustrations together, possibly in a book form?
I think Adam talked about like self-publishing earlier, and I think that's like a really like good entry point to like start, I guess, like experimenting with that. I've like never tried it, so I think maybe I'll be open to it in the future, especially when I'm like drawing so much in the park that I'll be like excited to kind of like compile something that's like a field guide of like my park or something. That would be really nice or really cool. But yeah, I'm not sure. I'm not much of a writer. I feel like a lot of the times when I write, it's really just to like think through a problem or like brain dump something, like an emotion that I'm feeling onto pages, just so that I can like feel better. It feels like I'm like flushed. But I haven't really explored the possibility of like writing for an audience. That I'll totally be open to like trying out in the future. So yes, I think it'll be fun to like do that in the future.
Thank you again for talking about your process. 3 of Wendy's illustrations are in Canto Cutie. Our next artist is Megan Suhu. She is a Los Angeles native that is currently based in Oakland, California. She is currently finishing up her final year at the California College of the Arts and is expected to graduate in fall of 2021. She mainly works within the realm of photography, sculpture, and installation, but enjoys being multifaceted in various practices. Most of her work conveys the human condition within their surroundings, and in most recent years, portrays her own personal experiences through her art practice. Here is Megan.
Hi, my name is Megan Suhu, and I wanted to give some background information about my work first, just because it does deal with heavier topics. But like Catherine mentioned, yeah, I am in my final year or upcoming semester in my undergrad education. But this past year, at least within my senior project within photography, I kind of through COVID, I guess, being stuck at home while I was actually abroad last spring 2020, I had to come back home, rush back home to LA, and dealt with the, I wouldn't say aftermath per se, but I guess reliving back at home with my family since which I haven't since high school. And so through that, I was going through a lot of childhood trauma, and through that, I created a lot of imagery, poems, and a photo book that's still like in continuation. But I'll just read my artist statement, which kind of gives a more overview of it. So my senior thesis idea being things you carry, things you go through, is a body of work that focuses on the traumatic childhood experiences I faced, spanning over 2 decades. This is the first attempt I've undergone to explore the trauma in a physical form through the use of family archives and my own photographs. In this series, I examine childhood trauma with the help of landscapes, portraiture, and the domestic space. In the process of undergoing countless personal writings to truly understand the extremities of the mental, physical, and sexual abuse I faced, I was able to gain a better understanding of how to cope with what happened to me and really try to flesh out all the things I've been unknowingly holding in. Being forced to return home due to the pandemic, I found myself confronting the place where all the traumatic events occurred and realized that for me to move forward, I need to let the past stay the past. And so within my work in Canto Cutie, I created a poem, which is First Time for Everything. And I'm going to read the most finalized version. So when I sent it into submission for Canto Cutie, it was a little like maybe like my closer to like middle or like close to end draft, but I was still working on it. So it's called First Time for Everything. From the moment you said it, I could feel a sense of indifference, taste saline flowing up and down my airway. All I could do was nod and say, mm-hmm. All I could do was nod and say, mm-hmm. I was going through my thoughts. I burst into tears. I tried to suppress it. It wouldn't budge. Couldn't catch my breath, heartbeat beating incessantly, my self-sabotaging nature, reliving those emotions of being alone by myself in a corner crying aloud. Helpless with what was in front of me, trying to lay myself down as I couldn't stop sobbing, tasting the salt through my lungs, drawing for a breath of air. I recomposed, brought my thoughts aloud. All it was the fear of not being loved, not having someone to fall back on. It was all in my mind, the trembling tremor of my fears taken abound. And that's the end of the poem.
Thank you so much for reading your work. It's very visceral. We're now opening it up for questions. Feel free to unmute yourself or just post in the chat.
Yeah, it definitely helped. Writing and journaling definitely helps within at least my art practice. I learned just with this project alone. Yeah, just in general, I think poetry and writing definitely helps within my practice, but it's also two other art forms that I've always enjoyed. Reading and learning myself, not just like my own.
A question is, you mentioned you also do photography. Would you be open to sharing some of your work or let us know where we can find it?
Yeah, I could share my Instagram handle below. Yeah, my Instagram's kind of like all my personal photos, many projects I usually work on. Yeah, I actually started in photography my first year and then decided to double major in sculpture as well. And so that's why I have another semester. So I'm almost done, but yeah, I think having different interests in like at least my art practice helps me kind of think differently within the 2-dimensional and 3-dimensional mediums.
I'm wondering if have you ever shared your poetry with maybe like some kind of like therapy group or some professional? I'm wondering if anyone else has found like solace in your poetry.
I haven't really shared my poetry other than to like a few close friends and my professors that were looking through my work, because I decided to write. I had this weird experience where I had a week where I kind of fleshed out a lot of feelings that I had, like just working through my project. And in that week, I wrote like 7-8 poems, which was like the first experience I ever had with writing my own poetry and kind of fleshing it all out. And so in doing that and having like professors and friends read it, it definitely was hard for me like to have it so raw and to kind of talk about it, I guess, like my childhood trauma. But I think it helped with me talking more about it just because I think like within like Chinese culture and like Cantonese culture, at least for my experience being Cantonese and Taishanese, I kind of learned early on that a lot of feelings and emotions you kind of have to let or stay in and not really like express it or explain like the situations of the past. It's kind of like that happened and it's like forgotten. And so in having it, I guess, like a public viewing, I think it will be when I hopefully like in the future either self-publish or have a publisher publish my photo book. Just because I definitely would want that out there. And it's like, I think one of my most recent and most personal works that I have done so far. I think that's what my college education kind of led up to, just because I started working through personal things like relating to culture and like things about me. And then through COVID kind of like expressed or learn to deal with more things about myself and my own experiences. Yeah.
And the last question is, what advice would you share with others about, or others who are also going through their own processes of healing?
I'd say definitely find your support system. I think for me, it was more leaning on like certain family members and friends, but also having something that you can personally do yourself and kind of like just write out what happened, or like if necessary for me, I also underwent therapy and still am, just because of everything that I experienced as a kid. But yeah, I think the support system is like the most important. I'd say like having friends or having at least someone to talk to really just move past it, but also understand that yeah, like whatever you experience is not exactly your fault. There's many situations and things that affect you either not personal, I wouldn't say not personally, but like it's just an effect because of something else that happens within life. Like, yeah. I don't know if that's like the best explanation, but I think that's how I went through it, I guess. Yeah. And still am. Yeah.
Thank you so much for your advice and your vulnerability and sharing the most inner part of yourself with us.
Yeah, thank you for letting my work be in Canto Cutie. Yeah.
The next artist that we'll be talking tonight is Pamela Kwong. Pamela Kwong is a Cantonese American artist of life. She writes, draws, creates, and binds journals. She is on a journey of exploring languages, shaping up her voice, finding ways to weave stories with words. In her free time, she wanders around and goes down a rabbit hole of books, songs, and coffee. Here is Pamela.
Thank you, Catherine, for the introduction. I'm so grateful to be here and to listen to everyone's stories. It's very cathartic. I'm going to share part of my story. I grew up listening to 80s, 90s canto pop songs, and so I selected 6 songs that are source of solace and wisdom. Although I have been judged for listening to canto pop, I hold on to my father's stories of browsing the latest Hong Kong records and cassette tapes at a New York City Chinatown music store, which no longer exists. The nostalgia ties into a particular time when Hong Kong entertainment was experiencing a wave, the second wave. The Cantonese diaspora is vast and scattered, but our songs connect us back together. Our stories will live on if we keep sharing them. I have a story deep down in my heart. If you have ever been judged for listening to canto pop, This tailored list of classic songs reminds you to listen to your heart, soul, and spirit. You are meant to tell your story because no one else will. Never be ashamed of who you are and sing along with Beyond. Whoa, oh, oh, 我有我心底故事. Don't worry, I won't be singing the other songs. The first song is 我的故事陳百強. It's just like embrace your own story. And his voice holds sadness as deep as the ocean. The second song, Sernhoi Tan by Yip Lai Yi, has lyrics reflecting upon the philosophy of Yum and Yearn. The third song is Dong Nin Ching, Zheng Got Wing, which takes you back to the past but also reminds you to move forward. The fourth song is Jake Yearn Ji Guo, Mo Yunfang, whose voice carries so much resilience and strength. Even if life gets difficult, appreciate the sunset, the beauty of life. Cherish the time on earth because we're only here for a brief time. To break the nostalgic mood, the next song is a lighthearted one, 還是覺得你最好，張學友. And the best for the last is Beyond's 不再猶豫. This band has so many classic songs such as 海闊天空 and 光輝歲月. I particularly picked the song which reminds us that we will eventually see through our dreams of freedom in times of adversity. And the chorus sings 我有我心底故事, which marks the intention of sharing this list of songs to embrace our stories. And if you like to listen to the playlist, you could search 我有我心底故事 on Spotify. And there's an extra song at the end, which a Canto rapper has like really nice one. Thank you so much for listening.
We are now opening it up for questions. Feel free to unmute yourself or type in the chat. I'll read them out loud.
Hi. I want to ask about how do you sometimes like get embarrassed when people like hear like some really like epic sounding ones, like the second one, like Shanghai Tan. Like you'd play it and it's immediately like long fun, long loud. Like how do you do it? I mean, I love those songs. I mean, like Wang Jim is the best, and you know, like lyrics and all that. But like, yeah, it's hard to translate that kind of like epicness. Like, I guess it's like the same as like Europeans, like they have their opera and their like Gothic chants and stuff. I don't know. I like to like explain to people like, no, this is not stupid. It's not embarrassing. You know, like you have young weird stuff too. Like we have ours. Leave me alone.
I love that so much because I have trouble sharing the Canto pop songs I listen to because this is before I was born. I was born in 1995. So I like Adam, who's stuck in 1989. I'm stuck in like the 1980s and like 1990s Canto pop songs. So yeah, Sernhoi Tan is dramatic, but I love it.
I also grew up listening to a lot of John Gottwing because after he died, like my family just got a bunch of like live concert DVDs for my grandma. And so she would like play it all day long, just loop it, you know? And I actually really appreciated those because like he had a period of time when he really started experimenting with like drag costumes. And he was starting to kind of express part of his queerness. I don't want to turn this into like a gossip about Jeff Gottwig, but like, yeah, I mean that was really, he was iconic as fuck. He's an iconic gay, iconic bisexual, whatever he was. But I think back on him and how big of an influence it was, you know, for me. like my first exposure to like men in drag was him, not like these drag queen shows that like, you know, now that globalism is like allowing people in Hong Kong to like watch drag queen shows or like be more familiar with it or whatever, you know.
Yeah, I think the first time I saw him cross-dressing was in the movie with the Cantonese opera. I forgot the name of the movie, but he's such an icon, and I think he still has an impact till this day. And like sometimes when I'm watching or listening to like Korean variety shows, like they still pop in like Jungkook songs. So it's like still like really embedded in like Asian culture, but like, and yeah.
People might not know this. I want to share this. Japanese people and like Korean people, like people in East Asia used to try to learn Cantonese to sing Canto pop. And I think like Leslie Jung Wing, he had a lot of influence over that because he was really, really handsome. He was just, you know, the most beautiful man ever. So
I agree. Oh. And also like just to picture the impact of the second wave, Hong Kong entertainment wave. So when Michael Jackson was like the best-selling musician album, the second one was Zheng Hao Yao. So that just shows like how much impact Canto Pop was.
We have 30 more seconds for another question. You are free to type it or just unmute yourself and ask. In the chat, we have a lot of personal anecdotes, which is so heartwarming to see.
I'm very touched. Like I was so nervous, like I'm still nervous, but it's so amazing to connect with all of you through these stories and songs.
I'm definitely going to follow your Spotify playlist. Thank you again for sharing these songs with us and just like evoking a lot of memories for a lot of people here.
Thank you so much.
Our last speaker for tonight is Lauren Ban. Lauren was born and raised in Hong Kong and is currently pursuing a marine biology degree at the University of California, Los Angeles. She's an assistant photo editor for the UCLA student paper Daily Bruin and partakes in street and wildlife photography in her free time. Lauren has a photo set and a short story in Canto Cutie. And here's Lauren.
So I actually made a PowerPoint for my short story. So I don't know how we want to do this. Like, should I talk about my photos first or should I do my PowerPoint?
I have all your photos here, and I only have these two pictures from your short story.
Okay, yeah. Maybe I can like share my screen and then like kind of do a presentation. Sorry, kind of like undergrad science student things. I kind of am very used to making PowerPoints, so I have one.
Okay, do you want to talk about your photos first?
Okay, sure. Yeah, so I guess some background. This was during July last year, and that was I think that was kind of like when COVID got bad. like a little worse during the year. So I was kind of just stuck at home all the time and really didn't have much to do, but except like go on walks with friends, because it wasn't really safe to do anything else. And this is after a typhoon 8 during that summer, like one of the rare times where it's actually cool to walk outside, like physically cool. And yeah, I just thought it looked really cool that day. And I was really glad I brought my camera, because I feel like when it rains, like the whole city is kind of covered with rain, like a glowing sheen from all the city lights, and kind of like makes me see the city I've like grown up in and I'm so familiar with in like a different, more eerie or ethereal light. And yeah, just kind of like appreciate Hong Kong's beauty in another way. And yeah, those are my other photos. And yeah, it's just kind of, this is where the pier is. We kind of just walked along the Hong Kong Island side of Victoria Harbour. And yeah, there was nobody. It was really cool because those places are usually packed. And the other photos, the coral ones, are included with my short story. And yeah, I could share my PowerPoint and maybe talk about that a little more. Could you enable screen sharing, please? I think it's still disabled. Okay. Right. Okay, gotta move stuff around. Yeah, I guess this is just like a PowerPoint to kind of talk about my inspiration behind writing my short story / personal essay, because I feel like when talking about Hong Kong identity or Cantonese culture, usually it's more talked about like things like food or cityscape were talked about more. But for me personally, I feel like Hong Kong's natural spaces are one of the strongest things that like cement my Hong Kong identity. And I feel like that phenomenon is kind of evident in other like Hong Kong media as well, but like the two linkages aren't often, like this linkage isn't often made. So I guess I kind of want to just share my inspiration behind the story and talk about why it's so important to explore your own backyard, especially if that's Hong Kong, and how that like relates to protecting our own homes. So this picture is from this hike at Changzhou, and it's like a really long hike, and just saw these beautiful rocky shores. It was great. Oops. So a little bit about me. I think I already got introduced, but yeah, I was born and raised in Hong Kong, and I moved to California in 2018 for college to study marine biology, and I do photography on the side and sometimes write. And I'm a city girl at heart, but I also love all things outdoors, and this is me. So Hong Kong is a biodiversity hotspot, and I feel like this fact is often neglected because in the mainstream like consciousness, especially internationally, we're often just depicted as an urban jungle, and most people outside of Hong Kong don't really know about our beautiful natural spaces, right? So one thing about this is we have 84 hard coral species, which is more than the entire Caribbean Sea, yet the Caribbean is often like praised as this beautiful, pristine marine space, right? But Hong Kong, this tiny like island, or this tiny collection of islands, has more like hard coral species of the entire Caribbean, and I just find that so amazing and crazy. And a little, I guess, brief overview is of our, I guess, marine geography is like to the west, we kind of have like those Chinese white dolphins, because it's where the Pearl River Delta comes out. And in the middle, it's like the transitional zone. And to the east, there's like more oceanic waters where you can find corals. So to the left here, it's these birds are kind of found in the wetlands areas to the west, and corals are found to the east. And there's just a beautiful diversity of marine habitats. But of course, there's also another perception of Hong Kong waters that I feel like is what most people think of as well. So when I walk around Hong Kong's like beaches, sometimes a lot of trash just gets circulated up. And this is found on the beach at Donglongdo. And it was just sad to see because otherwise it looked so wild and beautiful, yet the whole beach was just like covered with plastic trash. And yeah, this one's from my photo essay, or like was one of the photos I took when I went out to take the photos that are published now in the photo essay. And this is kind of near my home, and it's an area with a lot of fishing boats. And when you walk past it, it looks nice kind of, but you also smell like strong smell of fish and also like gasoline, and it's not very pleasant, and you don't really think, wow, what a beautiful marine habitat, right? And the fact is Hong Kong, despite its biodiversity, is also like threatened by a lot of anthropogenic or human-caused impacts. And in the 1980s, like overfishing, dredging, reclamation, and sewage discharge wiped out 80% of all the corals in Total Gong, or Hong Kong's Total Channel. And yeah, that's just sad to know, right? Because they are so beautiful, and like they're so beautiful now, but imagine how much like better they would have been if none of this happened. So I guess the inspiration of my piece was after I went on a field trip with like a Hong Kong U Marine lab, and also taking diving courses last year when I was back home during, again, COVID, and interacting with scientists like fishermen and divers like taught me how to appreciate like a more intimate firsthand local knowledge of our waters, and also really kind of made me like ponder upon this more existential question that I still, I guess, think about all the time. Like, why am I studying marine biology in California and I don't even know that much about my own backyard, right? So when I was back in Hong Kong, I thought this was a good time to just learn more and explore more, even though I already tried to do that. And yeah, so, and I don't think that was just me. And especially during COVID, again, everyone, like most people couldn't leave Hong Kong unless they were willing to come back and like hotel quarantine for 14 plus days. So a lot of people started like traveling within Hong Kong. And I think there was a kind of urge to find beauty in our own city. And I saw like, even in like say YouTube and stuff, I saw this, saw people try to promote Hong Kong's beauty even more. And these are two YouTubers, hiking YouTubers that I really like, called Kata Joy Sanseng and also Kate Lam Lo Yi. And they also like just show all these like really uncommon trails, or kind of go around the rocky shores, exploring like remote islands. This is like the YouTube banner of like one of these YouTubers. And if you're not familiar with, I guess, Hong Kong protest slogans and stuff, this is one of the things people say, right? And like and it's just like a really simplistic thing. Like, I really fucking love Hong Kong, essentially. And to see that like in this nature channel kind of made me realize, oh, it's not just me who thinks that like protecting our spaces, our natural spaces, is also really linked to us protecting our own identity as like Hong Kongers. And here's like a quote from like this ethnography I read a while ago, and I was just like, again, really happy to see this link between Hong Kong's nature and Hong Kong's identity. So this is written about like a rare Hong Kong orchid and like the 1997 handover, and about how like one thing's specificity is kind of often the basis of which things are protected. So like the first quote is kind of like, oh, they wanted to protect this orchid because it was only found in Hong Kong. And it kind of paralleled how people like during the handover, they were kind of worried that this unique Hong Kong culture, this West meets East like cultural blend was could be threatened if like we were given back to mainland China. And because of that fact, exactly, people were more inclined to just try and protect Hong Kong culture, whatever that is, right? And if that doesn't make sense, like, please ask me more. I feel like that may not be as direct, may not be as easy to understand, but yes. So I guess the more I wanted to protect Hong Kong's ecosystems, the more connected I felt to my home, and also vice versa. And so after that, I volunteered to help monitor restored corals with WWF, and also from their talks, I learned how there's hope for our habitats, and there was like a coral restoration success rate of 80%, even though like they were so destroyed by previous like total gong development. And just kind of made me think that there's hope for change even in dire situations. And that made me kind of expand that to other things in Hong Kong, right? You know, like with the protests and everything and all the shit that's going down, you may think that like may feel hopeless and Hong Kong, like you may feel like there's no future in Hong Kong. But I guess one thing I've thought about a lot is like how resistance and activism is really multifaceted and encompass like all parts of Hong Kong, right? Not just like, I mean, of course our like democracy is important, but also like just things like protecting our lands. And I know there's like a strong like conservation push to protect like Lantau Island, where like this area is like a important marine habitat, but they're trying to like reclaim the land and destroy all the marine habitat for new housing, even though there's brownfield sites that can be developed. But that's like a whole other like topic. And I guess there's also so much to protect other than just like politics, the more mainstream politics. There's like our art scene, our language, our habitats. And yeah, I just think it's like, it might feel hopeless, but there's still so much more to protect at home. And yeah, I guess I just want people to keep that in mind. And that's the end of my presentation. Any questions?
I have a comment. I don't like, I know at the end you're like, oh, like protecting the ocean is like you're kind of separating the idea of like, oh, there's like the politics, like the activist people, and then there's like me trying to like protect the ocean or advocate for that. But it's like, no, like all of those, I feel like all those are political. Like, I mean, Hong Kong is basically local. Like, you know, in America, we're so big, so we talk about, oh, local politics and like national politics. But like Hong Kong is just like everything's local, like everything is the same thing. And I think, no, like being local about like caring about your local issues is political. Like, I mean, we talk about like where tax dollars go, like, you know, the whole Ocean Park debacle and all that stuff, you know, like what money, like how much money should be spent on who to protect our ocean, you know, or, you know, the idea of it. So I don't think it's all like it's all separated. I think it's all connected. Like I feel like we should approach it that way, you know. And I mean, I live here in America, and like people get super passionate about like, you know, school board stuff, like super tiny, like nobody else outside of this area care about things, but like all those things are political, you know. So
yeah, I definitely agree with what you're saying. I think like earlier on when I was making the presentation, the slide was actually titled like conservation is inherently political, and I guess that was the kind of point I want to make. Like, even though the most like more the things that are more immediate on people's consciousness is to protect like our democracy and all that, but just everything else, protecting everything else is also political. And even though not everyone might think that way.
Do you plan to publish your writing for more readers in Hong Kong?
I would like to, I guess, but I don't really know like any avenues. I think I just came across Canto Cutie on social media, and like I actually wrote like the piece for a class, and my TA like encouraged me to publish it somewhere. So I just was like, oh wait, they're recruiting for new pieces, so I guess I should submit this. But yeah, if I can, like, if anyone knows of any good publishing avenues in Hong Kong, that would be great.
I'm just gonna speak. The Ocean Park thing that happened a while ago, like people were saying how like some people were saying how like Hong Kong's oceanic identity is inherently linked to our compatibility with the kind of laws that we ended up adopting from the British, the common law, like because we're a port. They're also, you know, Britain also started off as like a, you know, like an island, and they rely a lot on trade, and we're a port, we rely a lot on trade, or we make our money on trade. And so having common law where you do the thing where you don't assume, so what was the phrase? You don't assume someone is guilty until proven guilty. I forgot how to say it, but yeah, like it helps international investors and business people to come and like, you know, not feel like they'll get in trouble, you know, if they do business here. Like it's a more open system. Like, I don't know, I thought that was interesting, like talking about like Hong Kong's oceanic identity and how it's important for its residents to understand that, yeah, we are a port city, and also like we have a connection to that place because it's a source of our wealth and it's a huge resource, and also like protecting it is important. Like I think all those things are really fascinating, other than like, yeah, nature and all those beautiful creatures, but it's also like, I mean, everything's connected, you know, like if I don't know, sometimes like you want to convince people to like give a shit about like nature, you have to tell them, oh yeah, like it makes you money. Like you have to, every time you have to tell someone to care about something that doesn't make money, you have to somehow convince them it's related to money or something. But yeah, I just remember that part, like the older news about Ocean Park. So yeah.
Yeah, responding to your comment about like how to make people give a shit about nature. I feel like, yeah, that hasn't also been like addressed a lot in Hong Kong, but I guess like a class that I took here at UCLA is kind of about like valuing ecosystem services like in terms of money, and they talk a lot about how things like wetlands like give us storm protection and all that, and same goes for like mangroves and coral reefs that like absorbs the wave shock from storms. And I mean, like Hong Kong gets hit by typhoons a lot, and I feel like if that was also kind of promoted more as like natural habitats or coastal habitats being like promoted more as something to that like gives us like something tangible, like some tangible source of protection, then that could also help with our conservation efforts.
Also, I haven't like read up that much on it, but if like the whatever flood is coming, right? Like, you know, like the glaciers are melting and then the water shoreline is like going up, and like, you know, yeah, like you can't make money if your land is gone, you know, all those things. Yeah.
Yeah, sadly, it's like not like a local thing to stop global warming and sea level rise. But hopefully, Hong Kong isn't too fucked because you have hills. We'll see.
Thank you so much, Lauren, for starting that conversation. That concludes the night of sharing. Thank you so much for all the guests who were vulnerable, who shared about themselves, who shared their work. If any work or any artwork related to you, resonated with you, spoke to you at any time, please follow them. Please support those artists. We're still taking pre-orders, and as usual, you can read our digital zine for free at cantocutie.com. Thank you everyone for being a part of this, and I hope all these conversations continue, whether on social media, in person, maybe in Hong Kong one day. I don't know. Have a good night, and thank you again for sharing and taking part of this and supporting artists. Bye.